Well, hello, friends. Welcome to another session of Tech Talks. I'm your host, Larry Ortega. Today, we catch up with the amazing Darcie Green, who, since her Shuffle Shuffle Tap Tap dance debut at the county fair when she was 5 years old, has went on to do some amazing things. She tells me she feels obligated to give back because she has been given so much. From her parents to retired Assemblyman Joe Cotto and everyone in between, Darcie is truly a product of those who have also given so much. Fondly known as La Chingona of Eastside San Jose, Darcie's most recent win, in cooperation with a cohort of other leaders, was the take-back of the county hospital, a story that is a real-life David and Goliath tale. She is truly one of the coolest Chingonas I've ever met, with a giant heart for community's well-being. Let's get into it. What would you tell your 12-year-old self today based on what your experiences are to date?
Oh gosh, you can do it. You can just do it. Don't I would tell my 12-year-old self, you're so much more capable than you know. And you are so much more loved and brilliant and capable and able than you know. And there's a quote. I used to work for a man named Joe Cotto. He was a state assembly member and a
I
superintendent.
know Joe. Yeah, I
Yes,
know Joe.
my
I love Joe. Joe is awesome.
favorite boss to this day, just a remarkable human being. And he used to say that Eleanor Roosevelt quote all the time, like the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And I would say that quote to my 12-year-old self, to be honest. I would say the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of your dreams. And I grew up, as I mentioned early in the interview, dreaming and being told that dreaming is not like daydreaming into the future. Like dreaming is an intent, right? And a plan behind the dream, right, makes it reality. And so I would tell myself that at 12, like even the most radical of your dreams, they're possible. And you are so capable of achieving them. Don't give up, keep going, get back up.
Darcie credits much of her success in getting things done to organizing, being able to organize, and to making organizing a staple in every community's diet, so as to be ready for when the pendulum of life's challenges swings at injustices and inequities. Community can and will act with favorable outcomes. Darcie acknowledges we won't always win, and neither will we always lose.
I really believe in younger generations. I think young people are so wise.
What's an
And
example of that you can point to right now that you like, that you say, like, man, if we could do more of that, what would that be? Is there something that stands out to you?
I had the opportunity to serve on a city body that was called the Reimagining Public Safety Committee. It was created out of the murder of George Floyd, and when the city was really working on trying to think about police responses and investment in policing, and there was also a youth task force, right? There was also a youth
Okay.
component of this, and they made their own list of things. I was so blown away by how they presented this information and the process they used to come up with these proposals. We should be listening more to our youth and including them in decision making.
Right. Yeah. So many times, and this has kind of been my chief complaint when I sit around these roundtables to solve issues. So many times we come around the table to solve the issue, and none of the people are at the table that we're trying to solve that problem for, you know?
Mhm.
And so in this case, for the youth, absolutely. I think that what I hear you saying is that when you give them a task and you allow them to kind of figure stuff out, that you have some amazing results that are being created because their thought process is limitless. We as adults automatically put, oh, we can't go in this, this is as far as we can go. We can't go here, we can't go
But
there.
that's human nature though, right? Because I think it's learned. So, if you think about like even like mice in labs, right? They like learn, okay, well, I can't go that direction, can't go that direction. So over time, we start to learn what's not possible over
Right,
time.
right,
And so we start to fence ourselves in as
right.
individuals or as groups of people because over time we have learned So it's like, I don't want to be too hard on us because we have had closed doors, or we've learned something didn't work, or we tried that already and it didn't work for us. But having the discipline to say, well, it's a different time now. Well, they're different people now. Well, it's young people. I mean, I think as people who are older, we have to unlearn some of those things
Yeah.
and be willing to try them again.
To take
And
risks,
and take
right?
risks, and also and use the wisdom that we may have from experience to merge with the imagination of folks who are dreaming up things they haven't yet experienced. And it can be a balance, right, between, well, I tried that, it didn't work, and if you're going to try it, instead of me saying I tried that, it didn't work, here's some suggestions on what I would have done differently. Right? Like, good
Yes.
luck, right?
Yeah.
So we tend to be up against the money power, so you have to build the people power, and it's easier said than done sometimes, but it's really what has only the only thing that's been proven to really work when you have deeply entrenched inequities and deeply entrenched powers that be that don't benefit from. There are some segments of the community or institutions or companies or interests that really don't benefit from equality. They don't benefit from equity. They don't benefit from neighbors who trust each other. They don't benefit from community members who aren't afraid of unhoused people or aren't, quick to want to jail everybody up. There are people who benefit from the fact that we believe that we are in a scary crime-ridden city, or there's people who benefit from the fact that we might believe that it's unhoused people who are causing our, our problems. So I think you just have to ask yourself that question, like, who benefits from this narrative, right, that I'm being told? And like, we're all in this together. And so organizing is really important because it helps us to build relationships, but also helps us to dispel myths and narratives that we might have about each other. And so when we are in deeper relationship as neighbors, as parents, as people across the city, we are safer, right? Things get better. Community organizing is such an important part of the work. We have to organize everywhere. And what that means is organizations like the one that I lead, right, Latinas Contra Cancer, and others organizing. We know that employees organize, but also community members can organize themselves, right? You can organize yourselves in your neighborhood, on your street, in your family, at your school. Really working to engage at a deeper level the people who you're in community with, whatever that means to you, whether it could be your faith community, it could be the people you go, on trips with, whatever, but whatever is your community, putting in some organizing practices and principles there really goes a long way. And if we're going to move the needle on some of these, I mean, let's be clear, right? This valley that we're in Silicon Valley is not sustainable financially, from an economic standpoint, from a social inequity standpoint, from a housing standpoint. If nothing changes, this is just not a sustainable model, at least not for many. Maybe it might be for a small few, but not for many. And if we don't want to see the continued push out of the Latino community from Santa Clara County, we have to do some things different. Or I should say, not do something, we do lots of things different and support the efforts that are happening now. I was just at a meeting for a housing bond that's coming up, and we need to support the organizations and agencies that are working on issues like housing and income inequality and transportation and the things that are going to make our city livable and our county livable for families and for people who hope their children can choose to live there if they want to. Right now, that's just not the case for a lot of people. They can't see futures for their youth here, their kids here, because it's just, how do you survive here? And so we have to organize around those issues. And you don't have to sometimes we think about organizing or community work as this big scalable things, and it can seem overwhelming. But honestly, it's like micro solutions, right? Micro efforts happening across the county can do it too.
Darcie told me the county government played a key role in making the public aware. Darcie comes off a recent major win for the community. The county government took over the for profit hospital whose strategy had become profits over patients and were cutting services based on their bottom line rather than community need. Darcie and a cohort of other leaders flipped this idea on its head, returning care to a theme of patience over profits. This accomplishment was nothing short of a true life David and Goliath tale.
Because healthcare is should be a human service. It's a human right. It shouldn't be something that is commodified or that level of profit and shareholding and all of that. This really doesn't have a place in delivery. And so to turn this hospital, which the community has lovingly always referred to as its community hospital, back when it was Alexian and all of these like privately owned or I should say smaller systems, we've always thought of it as our community hospital. So for this hospital to return back to the public or to be under public ownership is just, it's good for everybody. I mean, first and foremost, you have to have a county government that's willing to make that purchase. And I have to say, and I think we may have covered this before too, but in April, it was the health and hospital system, the county leadership that made the community aware of the closing of these services. So I think first, you have to have that level of government that prioritizes patients over profits, that prioritizes health equity, and that sees something coming down the line, like these closures, like this harm, can see that coming down the line and can alert community. So that was the step one. And then we had members of the Board of Supervisors who were ready to support and engage community to get involved. And then you had organizations like ours, Latinas Contra Cancer, which has already been positioned to organize patients and has been thinking a lot about the power of patients in making healthcare decisions and healthcare systems and the importance of patients really being at the forefront of leading fights about health justice and conversations about healthcare and health justice. And then there were many other partners within the coalition, working partnerships that we co-led the coalition with, that put a lot of their wisdom and time and talent into moving this forward. So I say that to say it takes all of these different stakeholders doing their part and coming together with one vision, with one voice, and really not letting up until we get it done. So it took really all of that coming together to make it happen. It's hard to pinpoint the one thing because you
Sure.
needed all of those things. Even local media, I think local media did a great job. Our local print media, our local TV media, news media, and also our Spanish media did such a good job of understanding the finer points here, right? And understanding the bigger conversation around healthcare delivery and profit in healthcare. And they also did a really good job of holding all parts of the conversation accountable and making sure it was transparent. But I'm really proud looking back at it. And we just had it was actually the day that the sale went through, which was just a week ago or so, or last Monday, when the county announced that April 1st, that'll be the first day under county ownership or delivery there. We already had planned another campaign meeting. We've been meeting still. Our coalition has been our campaign has been meeting still every other Monday since last May. And so I'm really proud of the people who came around the table. The Single Payer Coalition, Amigos de Guadalupe, Si Se Puede Collective. There were many people in and out, some who were there regularly and some who were not in and out, but as the campaign went on, it was beautiful. It was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. I mean, the win aside, I mean, that was obviously the highlight, but I mean, I don't even know if that was a highlight, to be honest, because it was just such a fulfilling experience the whole way through, meeting people, getting to know people I already knew but didn't know that well in a different way, all of the fun and laughter and joy. I think particularly, like on a day like today, January 20th, 2025, is having that joy paired with the defiance in the face of injustice is what's going to keep our movement sustainable.
That's cool. What would you say is I mean, because a lot of times, you know, and I worked, nonprofits, for 30 years. I ran a nonprofit, and a lot of times community, doesn't want to get in the way of the train boiling, rolling down that track, and there's like, I care about this, but I don't want to get ran over kind of thing. What was it in this instance that kept the patients going, would you say, that kept, these patient advocates, these individuals saying, no, 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 this is important enough for me to stay engaged? What was it, would you say?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. First is, and and I've heard that there is something a little unique about Santa Clara County, in the way that this county responds to crisis. This is a county that does get in the way of those traits. I mean, this is a county where our leadership at many different levels has shown, whether it's elected leadership or CBO leadership or community grassroots leadership. This is a county with a history of stepping up, speaking out, getting involved, pushing back. So I think one, you have a community of people who are in deep relationship with each other and in right relationship with each other and are ready to jump when something is happening. And so it wasn't hard to look around and find community partnership
Okay.
on what we wanted to do. And then the second is, as I mentioned before, the joyful part. I mean, this to sustain work from April, May to now,
Yeah.
there has to be there has to be some small wins, there has to be some momentum, but there also has to be some actual true fulfillment and happiness and liking the people that you're in the trenches with. And at least from my experience of the campaign, I enjoyed seeing those folks every other week. I enjoyed seeing those folks every single week in front of the hospital in an action. I
Wow.
enjoyed going to the county board of supervisors to bring people to speak, or to the city council or planning commission and sitting there with people I've been organizing with. I authentically, genuinely enjoyed their company, because we just had such vision and purpose. And it's not to say that happens in every single campaign. I don't know, but in this campaign, I think it also doesn't hurt that HCA is such an objectively bad actor, right?
Okay.
In at least here locally. I don't know how they are around the rest of the country, although starting to learn more about that as we do more research. But they were pretty terrible to the community, and that can also be a very unifying experience to have so many people be so negatively impacted by the business decisions of a company that really holds your life in the palm of their hands. This is
Right.
healthcare. That's a unifying,
Yeah.
that's a unifying experience for sure. Everybody has a story
Right.
about a time when they needed their healthcare system, and whether it's them or their loved one, and it didn't do exactly what they needed.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, because I've been in the trenches. I know, I mean, you have hospital lobbyists, you have, state representatives that are absolutely in the pocket of the hospitals that, are, you know, you're on the other side of this. I mean, you have these, what I would call giant monsters that are, on the other side of this thing. And for, these, group of, community members to come together and say, hey, we don't care. We don't care how big you are. We don't care how much money you have. We're coming, right?
Yeah. That was part of I mean, even as you say that, it makes me feel happy inside. I get this like warm, fuzzy feeling because that's what it takes. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because it was, for some folks, it reminding them that yes, that might be one hospital, and we do think of it as our community hospital because many of our family were born there. It's been there for a long time. It's been there all of my life, but it's actually a very large corporation
Yeah.
that owns the hospitals, right? So they'd like you to think that it's just the one hospital here and the one hospital there. They don't have anything to do with each other. And part of the strategy we had that was really effective was tying the two together in this tale of two hospitals in two parts of a city, one low income side of the city and another side of the city a little less low income. And so it can seem overwhelming, but remember, you don't have to attack all of it at one time. It's just what can you do in the part of the world you live in with the skills that you have and the resources that you have. And if we all just did that, right? If we all just figured out like what is the thing that I can do in the face of all of this injustice and all of these systems and these huge corporations, and boil it down to what is the thing that I can do. And here in this county, this was the thing we could do. And I one thing I appreciated and I was very excited about was the level of the amount of information that got out into the community about healthcare. I just started getting people who would call me, right, just wanting to talk about something they read in the newspaper or saw on TV about healthcare or about profit in healthcare or about corporate healthcare or about payer systems. And that was really exciting.
That's what makes the story so amazing. Why, I wanted to talk to you about it is that you truly, you talk about the David and Goliath story, it's true that.
There's an organizer in our coalition, and his name is Gabriel Hernandez, and he's at the Si Se Puede Collective. He's a director there, and he actually said he talked about the David and Goliath story, and what he said was important from that story that we could lots of things, big lessons we could take into our work. And this was early in the summer. He said it was about getting that rock in the right place, right? It's like you
Exactly.
didn't need to have the biggest boulder, the
Right.
biggest rock, but it was about having the strategy and the patience and the discipline to get the rock in the right place that could topple Goliath. And that always stuck with me when he said that. It's like, oh, it's not about having to match their money. It's not about having to match their corporate power. It was about using the people power that we had and targeting the right space.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Wow, that is
He's
heavy.
great. He has a lot of great, you should talk to him today. He has a lot of great stories.
Yeah, that is really that's amazing because if you think of trying to topple the whole thing, it's just like, oh my gosh. But I like what I'm hearing is that the media, and this is like super critical, right? The media played a key role in just informing people, letting people know like what was up, like what was going on, and they did it in a way that was balanced again against like kind of all odds because if you think of all the number of lobbyists that they had on the other side and because the hospitals they have their own their own lobbying group, right? And their whole idea is profit, make money. And there's people that I know that once were assemblymen that are now part of that lobbying group. And they're not bad people. They're trying to get a paycheck just like all of us, right? So, this just so happens to be where they're at. So you can't hate them or be mad at them for doing what they do, but um, trying to figure out like, okay, how do I take down that hospital lobbying association? How do we go up against that? When the media literally the media's that's how they pay their bills. The hospital advertises with the media. So for them to take that in, in many instances, I don't know if that's the case here, right? But that's
Yeah.
what we go up against in many situations that when you challenge a big entity like that and you're trying to utilize media to get information out, the conflict is, media has a bottom line as well, right? They're like, well, I can't bite the hand that feeds me. Media says that, right? It's like, I can't, I'm not going to go after these people
Is that
because,
is that true? I don't
they're
know.
writing big checks, right?
Is that the case though? I mean, I think that there are. I mean, I think might be increasingly the case in the like national media landscape that we have been acquiring lately. I think for local media, it might be less true. Um, yeah, the interaction with that like level of lobbying there might be I don't know though because I'm not an expert in that, but what I do know is here with this, at least for this campaign,
Right.
with this media, they seem to be very curious about what was going on and approached it with with journalism, right? Like let's talk to everybody and figure out what the story is here. And the messaging that the media was, and they really took on the like patients over profit messaging. And I think that was helpful because that's what was happening.
Darcie shares that the idea Latinos are somehow lesser than is absolutely contradicted by the history of our ancestors. She says, "We come from a brilliant people." However, the manner in how media in the past and sometimes today framed and or frames Latinos as being lesser than had a real effect on how you begin to view yourself. It is therefore incumbent on us to make sure we tell our own stories, that we control the narrative of who we are.
Is, growing up in East San Jose, there's often, at least when I was younger, this narrative of, we're less likely to graduate from high school. We don't go to college at the same rates. We have all these, where we don't learn in the same way. And like our parents don't care as much about education. And that's why, like, all of these stereotypes, right? And then when you dig into it, you realize, like, ancestrally, like, we come from a brilliant people. Right? Like, we were like scientists and we're mathematicians and we invented all of these things. And
Right.
you start to realize when you learn your cultural history, and as a Chicana, right, who's like third generation born here, you get far removed from that. And so what you learn about your own cultural history is what you see in the news. And if the news is biased, and definitely at the time, right, in the 80s, 90s, 70s, you had a local news source that was incredibly biased, if not racist, and the way that they covered the Latino community, the way they covered East Side San Jose, you have these negative stories reflected back onto you on a daily basis. It can really start to frame the way you view yourself and the way you view your own community, and you start to believe that these educational disparities or health disparities or economic disparities are some natural cause, right? That you're somehow like culturally or your like family history DNA is the reason these things exist, and how actually the things that we were told were obstacles or barriers to us achieving are actually our strengths. That was very powerful for me because it reinforced what my parents taught me, right? So it's your parents teaching you that you are smart, you're brilliant, you're special, knowing that deep inside of my DNA there is brilliance and dignity and worth, and joy, right? And art and music and all of those things. It helps to reinforce what you learn from your own family. And it's definitely made me, I think, even more hopeful and imaginative as a community leader and someone that looks to make positive changes in the community. But the more that we're able to push for our community being able to tell our own stories and have agency over our own stories, and also stories that are just normal. Like, not everybody, like, we have shining stars in our community, and oh my God, like, and I love them all. Like, we should be just like treasuring them. And also, like, it's okay just to hear the average Latino story too, right? And like that's also really important. Everyday people and this snapshot in time that we're in. It's important to continue documenting where we're at as Latinos. And I think where we're at as Latinos, specifically here in Silicon Valley. If you look at just the history of this valley, like my office looks out over East San Jose and I'm in downtown. And I can remember a time when it was orchards, and I can remember a time when we were the Valley of Heart's Delight. And we think about, I mean, not even the phrasing Silicon Valley leaving Latinos behind, like the intentional exclusion of our community from this latest gold rush is unacceptable. And so we have to continue to fight for representation and telling our own stories and being a part of the table that, or making our own table where decisions are made about the future of the valley, for sure.
I asked Darcie about her inspiration, why she does what she does. Her response, brilliant. Though the words perhaps have hit my ears before, I honestly have never actually heard it like the way she said it. In summary, her obligation stems from the investment made in her by her father, her mother, retired Assemblyman Joe Cotto, and others from the community. And though she acknowledges this may sound like a paying it forward, it is more obligatory than that. It is necessary to pay these dividends on these investments. Stated differently, Not only does she have to, she wants to, as it brings her tremendous joy in doing so.
Is my motivation comes from this deep level of accountability and responsibility I feel toward my family and community that raised me, right? My parents, my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, who put so much into me believing in myself as a Latina from East San Jose that I actually could and should do anything, that I actually could and should follow my dreams, that I could dream of a world that didn't exist yet and work toward it. So, having that type of hopefulness and imagination and belief in myself pushed into me from when I was such a young child by deeply loving family and community, I feel just deeply responsible and so much gratitude for that, that it's not even a matter of paying it forward. It's a matter of continuing to dream and then work with others to make a better world. Right. So when I was little girl, very little girl, I was in like dance, right? Like tap and jazz. And I was, I mean, small. I was like 4 or 5 or something.
Okay.
And I don't know if the fairgrounds, it's still a great place to go. I'm looking forward to attending, but it was really the place to be, that time. And so we had a recital at the fairgrounds. And I was in this little bumblebee costume and I had this whole routine planned. And we were all ready to go on the stage. And it was just me and one other little girl who showed up. Like they didn't show, right? And
Oh,
she didn't
wow.
want to go, yeah, she didn't want to go on. And my dad, and maybe my mom as well, were like, just do it. Like you can do it, right? You can do it. And I went on there and did my little shuffle, shuffle, tap, tap all by myself. And it was this it was this feeling of like, you can do it, right? You're scared and you're by yourself, but we got you. Like we got you. Your parents are here, your family's here. You're rooted. Go do it. Maybe you'll make some mistakes and maybe you'll forget some things but you came all the way here. You're dressed up, you've practiced, you might as well go for it. And I'm a risk taker. I'm not reckless, but I'm a risk taker. I'm definitely someone who jumps right off cliffs. See if I land or if I fall or if I fly. And that I have my earliest memories are my parents telling me you can do it. You can do it. And sometimes you fly and sometimes you crash. But I hope, I look back and say I've lived a life of trying, right? Of jumping.
What would you say is your with Latinas Contra Cancer, your most significant accomplishment to date? What are you most happy with or most inspired by?
Um, I am I'm pausing. So I'm like, I'm here in my office actually at Latinas Contra Cancer, and right outside of my office door, there's a lot of amazing stuff happening. There are some amazing, like, I don't know if I could say this, but like badass Latinas like
Right on.
working here at LCC, from health educators to organizers to health justice fellows to patient navigators to housing resource navigators, boutique manager. I mean, there's so many amazing things happening. So when I think back to like, what I'm the most proud of, can I say two things? Is that when
Yeah,
it's so hard?
absolutely.
I have
Yeah.
like dozens, but I'll keep it to two. Okay, so first thing is, so our organization has been around for 20 years, right? We're celebrating 20 years this year, and we were founded by visionary.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's very
Yeah.
exciting. I've been here for going on 6 of these years, and we were founded by visionary Latina trailblazing journalist Isabel Duran, my media personality Duran, and she founded us after her own journey with cancer. And just a once in a lifetime kind of leader, just really strong and brilliant and motivated and unique person. And So I'm really proud of, and I hope that she is proud too, of how far we've come with this dream that she had. I've never founded something like this. I mean, I've been a founder of some organizations, but not a nonprofit like this. And so I don't, what it must take to have a dream in your head and have it still be around 20 years later is, really remarkable. So we have evolved so much, and it's built on the foundation that she has laid for us. And we are now like triple our size, triple the number of staff. We have so many more programs and contracts and relationships on the shoulders and the foundation of the work that she's done. We have been able to really expand. I think what we view of as the issue of cancer, really infuse into it more deeply that cancer is a social justice issue, cancer is a race justice issue, cancer is a gender justice issue, right? It's a reproductive justice issue. And even if you look at treatment and the advancements in the science, there are aspects of race and income, right, inherent in that too. And so I'm really proud of the way that we have expanded and have created a sustainable. We were a part-time organization when I came on board. I was a part-time executive director. We have part-time staff. We were a part-time organization. And we've now grown into a sustainable, fully functioning organization. And that makes me really proud to think about that it took a lot of work. I've held a lot of positions of leadership in my time, like elected office, government relations, working for the legislature. Nothing prepared me to be a nonprofit executive director. It is like
Wow.
hands down the hardest job I've ever had, but it's certainly the most rewarding. We really had to decide during the pandemic as a little organization, and it became very difficult to raise money, by the way, during the pandemic, because folks, rightfully so, were. And so we really had to decide, like, are we going to make it through the pandemic as an organization? And how are we going to show up to meet the needs of our community, which were growing much more urgent? And so we quickly pivoted. I mean, I'm really proud of the way that our organization showed up during the pandemic to support chronically ill folks, to support cancer patients and cancer survivors who were rapidly losing their housing, their food, their access to care and treatment. And we really were all hands on deck, just figuring it out with the rest of the county. And so it was a very scary and sad time, but also a beautiful time in the way that this county showed up for our most vulnerable community members and patients.
As a working and single mom, what are the biggest challenges facing women today, in your opinion?
Just blatant gender inequity in pay is a huge problem for women in this valley, but particularly for Latinas, because we will spend all of our time working to achieve while having like one hand tied behind our back. It's important to really advocate for equal pay for equal work for Latinas in this valley so that we can survive here too. We're just as smart, just as hardworking, if not even more. And we need to be able to live here. So I think that's to me, that's the biggest issue facing women and Latinas in particular. For single moms, childcare. Be rest assured that your child is safe, is learning something, is eating, is experiencing happiness and joy, and something that doesn't also burden your budget. But for single moms, I have heard, it's can be $500 to $1,000 a week, right? $1,500. You're spending sometimes $3,000 for childcare.
Wow.
So not only are you as a Latina getting underpaid, right, in your workforce, and then you're, having to work. And some people like it's also work is we like to work too, right? Especially it's like I want to work. And then you're paying this like huge amount of money for a childcare service. That's just, I mean, that is just such a backward way of doing things. And that's not sustainable. So childcare really needs to be, there needs to be some government programming around childcare. There needs to be some private public partnerships around how we're going to make childcare affordable for all parents, but particularly for single moms.
Where do you go from here? What's the deal there?
We believe that the one piece of that work is certainly patient organizing. So it's important to us to build robust patient organizing committees and a patient organizing model. We're going to continue to do that so that we can tackle these issues that came on from the perspective of patients. But making sure that our healthcare delivery systems are accessible and safe for people is a big priority right now.
And what are some of the wellness protocols that, because the best healthcare, right, is wellness care, right? It's like not to get sick or to know like what is out there that could possibly get you sick, or what are some of the things that your patient organizing are doing with regard to that?
You have to be a vigilant advocate for yourself and your loved ones. That's just really important. So the more that you can, and you're right, like there is stuff in everything, right? It's just, I mean, it's so even when you go, I mean, being like, first of all, having some helping yourself to train around food literacy is a good first start. We have a whole health education program here with some very talented promotoras and health educators who help people. We have a module actually rolling out that's all on chemicals and environmental impacts of cancer and the things externally that are going to lower your risk, raise your risk, all of the things that increase the likelihood of you getting a chronic condition or a chronic disease like cancer. And so it is really important to learn how to read labels of things, right? To learn about the ingredients and the things that you're consuming or giving to your children. And there's just so many things out there in our products that can be potentially harmful or can raise our risk for certain conditions. At the same time, as we talked about being overwhelmed earlier, you don't want to get to the point where you're so overwhelmed by how much is out of your control that you
Right.
just like shut down either. Because with that can come a lot of shame and guilt too, because there's our industries and country, so much is put on people as individuals to just make better decisions, right? Well, you just need to make better decisions and you just need to eat better, do better, or sleep more. And the reality is we live, and many of us live in places that are just unlivable. People are working many jobs and people are taking care of kids and can't afford childcare and are, doing all of these things that make it really, really difficult. For us, we encourage people to access health education, right? If your healthcare delivery system offers health education, try to go to those classes. We have tons of videos in English and Spanish on our website that are very specific to healthy living in the context of cancer, but I think are applicable to your life wherever you are, right? And whatever chronic condition. Also, being able to differentiate between where on the internet can I find good and solid health information, and how do I know when something is maybe not accurate information? And that's another piece. Just health and telehealth and digital literacy is also really important. But these are really, really big questions, and I think there's also a role and hopefully increasingly, well, maybe not increasingly more depending, but I think, in an ideal world, there's a role for government to play in regulating some of these things out of our products and out of the food that we eat, because it shouldn't all be on the individual consumer to dig through all of, like you were talking about with your in and out story. I mean, and you are someone who I think of as extremely knowledgeable when it comes to health and the products and things that we consume. And it's so easy to not realize what's in something or to be like, oh, shocked. So we have health educators who help people navigate that. I know there's lots of other community groups that also have health educators that help to navigate that.
From the schools on up, and really letting people know like where their food comes from is
Mhm.
like incredibly important. It's really nice to hear you say that that is something that you wholeheartedly embrace, and something that, is part of the protocols that you currently
But
have in
particularly
play.
for people undergoing treatment, they can't just eat anything, right? I mean, if you're going through cancer treatment, many of the treatments, your physician is going to encourage you to eat certain things, right, that are good for you, that are giving you the nutrition and the caloric intake for sure, but the nutrition that you need and the vitamins that you need. And so it's, you having access to that at any income is really important. And we know that that's not true for everybody. So that's why we try to get people not to take on that shame or guilt of, oh, I slipped up today and I, bought this for the family because I was tired or it was just what I could afford today, because we've made the healthy choice so hard in some places and the unhealthy choice so convenient. And so it's easy to say like, oh, just have more discipline. I mean, I know I certainly wish I like made 100% of the right consumer choices all of the time. And the reality is I don't always either. And I work at an organization where I'm studying this and thinking about this all the time. Just to give you an example of just how easy it is to do the convenient thing. And we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace about that.
But the more awareness that we can bring, that's really the goal. And it may, Darcie, is probably going to take, past our lifetimes before, but as long as we can start the trajectory, right?
But
To
there's
get
something
there.
beautiful about that. I love that you said that, because so many of the things that I dream about, that the people I'm in community dream about, I'm sure the things that you dream about won't happen in my lifetime, right? I mean, won't happen in my lifetime. And that's okay. I mean, but our only role is to move it forward a little, right? And to make sure we're not making it harder for the people to come after us who pick up these fights to take on. So we just can't let these fights regress. And when they do, you got to keep moving them forward. Some of these things we're not going to accomplish in our, some things we will, right? I mean, some things we will. And we move forward, that we move forward like we will. And some of them aren't meant for our lifetimes. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful. But there should be some people working on educating our community about the products and the companies, and the food that we eat and the companies we buy from and the products we bring into our home, and how to make different choices with those, while also recognizing that we could make all the right choices and still be exposed to chemicals that heighten our risk for cancer or other conditions, asthma. There's other like behavioral issues. There's all kinds of things that these exposures um, um, can produce in our lives, and that we have to also look at a regulatory level, a systems level, to remove those things. We belong to a national network called the Cancer Free Economy. And the Cancer Free Economy looks, their sole purpose is to bring partners together from around the country to better understand these chemicals, PFAS and forever chemicals, and the things that are in all that we consume, and to advocate for. So we do both of the things, right? We encourage people on an individual basis, on an individual level, and for themselves and their families and their workplaces, to think about the cancer causing chemicals that we're inviting into our lives and how can we stop. And we recognize that there are some chemicals that we can't escape on our own. And so we have to push for better regulation. We have to push for a ban of those chemicals. And that takes a little bit longer, right? But we believe as a network around the country, if we come together and organize ourselves, we can make little chips away at the chemicals. So one thing to point out, and some of these things are easier said than done, is the cost and convenience. So sometimes we think something is a choice, so we can tell our community, okay, you need to research all your products, and you need to, like, I'm putting a little makeup in here. You need to research all your products, and you can't buy any products with these chemicals in it, and you got to buy products that are all this and that. And then you have to grapple with, well, is there even a store near them
No,
that sells the product they should have? And if there is a store near them that sells the product that they should be buying, is it anywhere near affordable for them?
no, no, and
Um,
no, no, and no.
no and no, right? And so how unfair is that? Like, that's why I'm saying you can't separate the individual from the system.
It's a civil rights issue when you don't have enough information to make the decisions that you have, to include the store not being local or the price not being affordable, to the very thing that we're telling people, hey, look at, this is where you can get that stuff from. And so, information and accessing it, we talk about how do we deal with that, is to get it into the school districts, into the colleges, and start systemically introducing these concepts as they do with everything else. Like, here's George Washington's story, here's Abraham Lincoln's story, here's your nutrition story, on that same level. Here's your cancer causing, elements and what you can do about it, kind of things, putting it
Absolutely.
actually at that same level.
Um, and people do not have access to broadband. They also don't have regular access to their patient portals. Everyone should have access to it, and it should not the funding of it shouldn't be an obstacle for people to get the broadband that they need. And it's definitely the betterment of public health and the overall health of people if they have steady access to broadband and also a device that allows them to more easily, effectively access their patient portals.
And the battle doesn't stop, right? I mean, it's what you
No.
do. It's what drives you in the morning. Uh, Part of your legacy. Tell me about that. What is the legacy you wish to leave behind?
Oh God, that's such a big question. I just endeavor to be happy and to do good with whatever power I have, how relative it may be. And so that's all I really I want to have a joyful, happy life, and I want to do good with whatever power I have, no matter how relative it might be.
That's
And
beautiful.
that may not be my answer to your legacy question, but that's the answer that's coming up for me right now.
Well, no, it absolutely is on point, and it actually, and I don't know your spirituality, but for me, I'm a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, and I think it's really important. My Savior, and the love that He's brought to me has been amazing. But I always say it like this, the conduit of His love to me was my mom and dad, right? Because as a child, I was adopted at 9 months. I don't know if I shared this with you last time, but yeah. And then that conduit of love, I say it like this, conduit of God's love to me was through them, right? So the conduit of leadership and, if I could say this spirituality and you do what you do, came from, in part, right, from Isabel Duran, right? You saw her, she inspired you. She inspired the organization to which you now are, a major player in. And now the legacy that you set, you're setting it, right? By being the fighter, the chingona that you currently are, right? And other people seeing you like that, right? That legacy, they said like they aspire to be like and I think that's a really beautiful thing.
It feels like an immense honor to be able to do this work, to be able to come to this office every day, be in a space that where you can imagine. We spend a lot of time here at Latinas Contra Cancer imagining the world as it could be and thinking of systems as they could be and thinking of worlds that don't exist. And to be able to live a life where I have that space to imagine, to dream, and then to try to work with others to make those worlds real. I mean, what else could one ask for? So all of it feels like a blessing, and all of it feels very purposeful. And I just am just deeply, deeply grateful for the work that I'm able to do here.